You are listening to Talking Images, the official podcast of icmforum.com. Welcome back, everyone. This is the episode we promised you back in April when we released the oh so powerfully titled episode, Is Pixar Mediocre Now? And I learned, I was pretty ignorant, that Pixar is still pumping out shorts and showing no signs of stopping. This had to be investigated, so Adam, Brett and I sat down and watched, or at least tried to watch, pretty much every single short Pixar has ever released. Most of them over the last 3 or 4 days. And this episode, which is the product of this binge watching, will lead us to delve into pretty much everything, from the earliest glimpses of what was to come, with shorts like Tin Toy and Knick Knack coming out in the early 80s, clearly warming up for Toy Story, to their often award-winning and acclaimed standalone shorts from Gary's Game to Bow, to everything else, from SparkShorts to Pixar Popcorn to the co-op program to the feature tie-ins. And I just have to warn you here, especially those feature tie-ins may face some pretty disparaging comments as they come up. I know Adam in particular was not very happy with them. But which of these short films are the best? Which are the worst? And how has Pixar changed from the 1980s to the present? Has the magic of the early Pixar shorts been lost, with more and more of the focus shifting to just pumping out Cars and Toy Story tunes? Or are the Spark shorts and the co-op shorts comparable to the older cinema released shorts? Oh, and what's up with all the 2D? Yeah, that's right. If you were not aware, Pixar has actually released some 2D shorts. What is happening to the world here? Or perhaps more accurately, what is happening to the world of Pixar? To answer these questions and more, let me bring in today's co-hosts, Adam and Brett, fresh from diligently binging through Pixar short film catalog, and ask, what were your big takeaways from just cramming in all of these short films back to back? And how would you describe Pixar's short film offerings as a whole? And I think I'll start with you there, Adam, since I know you have had a very mixed experience, to say the least.
Hi, I'm really glad that we are recording this episode, because a few months ago, we did the Pixar Features one, and I finally watched every Pixar film apart from the 2 Cars sequels. And over the past few days, I've been working on the Pixar shorts, so I've seen, before the episode, before we started binge watching everything, I'd seen the standalone shorts up to about 2013, I think, and I hadn't seen that much else. So over the past week or two, I've watched 88 shorts, which is kind of ridiculous. There's about 30 shorts I didn't watch as well. So I think for me, I don't know how much we're going to go into at the moment before we delve deeper, but I think had I only watched the standalone sort of original shorts, my opinion would have been far more positive. I think watching a lot of the feature-related shorts, watching the 500 Cars shorts, kind of brought my overall feeling down a little bit. But I don't want to say too much in the intro in terms of what I think, but I think it's been an interesting experience anyway over the past few days catching up on Pixar shorts.
I actually skipped most of the Cars shorts. I watched a few, but I thought a few is enough there. I mean, the Cars franchise is my least favorite of the Pixar.
Yeah, you're not missing out on too much by skipping the Cars shorts.
Yeah, I took your advice there, Adam, so thank you so much for that. What about you, Brett? Do you share Adam's feelings on the Cars shorts, and what's your impression of Pixar short films overall?
Overall, I'm a big fan of the Pixar shorts. I haven't rated anything lower than a 7 out of 10, though I'm a pretty high rater in general. So there are a few there that I think are questionable. But I also skipped most of the Cars shorts aside from a few that I'd already seen. Not really interested in diving deep into shorts that almost feel like a TV series, a bunch of episodes. So I'd seen a couple of those already, but I didn't force myself to chase the rest of them down for this episode.
Yeah, that's perfectly fair. I mean, I did the same thing, so I really can't fault anyone. I'm shocked you rated everything 7 out of 10 or higher, which I rated several lower than that. But if you skip the Cars one, I mean, I can see how it could be theoretically possible. So we had a bit of a coin toss about where we should start. If we should start at the end with SparkShorts and the co-ops, or if we should start at the very beginning. And I guess the OCD won out, and we're starting from the earliest almost semi-experiments. I know Adam actually watched the actual, like some of like the early Lasseter shorts from the 70s and early 80s. I don't think Brett and I watched those, but I have sat down and I rewatched Tin Toy, I rewatched Knick Knack, and actually for the very, very first time, I watched the very earliest offering, so the adventures of Andre and Wally B, Luxo Jr., and Red's Dream. Light nightmare fuel in those a little bit, and very, very rough animation, especially in that first one. Wow, that first one. That might actually be the worst. But it's also just about 1.5 seconds of a guy being chased by a bee, so you can't really expect too much. But how would you guys describe these early shorts? Essentially, this was the path to Toy Story. So did you see like kind of an inspiration or a kind of magic growing out of these early short films?
I think for the first films, the 5 of them in the mid to late 80s, before Pixar really became Pixar, I mean, animation at the time wasn't, or I guess I should say computer animation at the time wasn't really anything to write home about. There was a lot of testing out what was working and what looked good, and so the image quality isn't really anything you can compare to what we see nowadays. But I think, and I'm probably going to reiterate this a lot throughout the episode, what Pixar has always been good at in their feature films, and I think what's really driven them to notoriety, is their ability to tap into emotion and to tap into feelings and to really connect with the audience. And the fact that you've got 5 early shorts about inanimate objects or a bee that, you know, you can fully believe that a unicycle has a dream, or you can see the playfulness in a desk lamp, or you can feel this, you know, you want that little toy in Knick Knack to succeed at his goal. The fact that they can build around such strong emotions in people in a short time frame with kind of terrible animation really speaks to how they're able to expand that into their feature films later on. So for me, those early shorts aren't really anything great. I think my 2 favorite are Knick Knack and Luxo Jr. I rated both of those 8. But they're still pretty interesting to see, especially to look at where Pixar started and where they've come. Basically, in just over a decade, from the late 80s, they went from experimenting with little shorts and not really having a brand name recognition whatsoever, to a decade later having put out some of the biggest animation hits in recent history, rivaling only the Disney Renaissance, and, you know, getting Oscar nominations and industry recognition. So I think it's a pretty impressive leap, especially because there wasn't really much in between. Like, there was a decade gap almost in shorts because they made those proof of concept shorts and then they started working on their first feature film, which is pretty impressive, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's worth mentioning too that Toy Story started as a short sequel to Tin Toy. They were planning on making essentially a Tin Toy Christmas special that would run around 30 minutes, but then they scrapped it and thought, hey, we can actually make a feature film out of this, and they essentially changed pretty much everything except the concept that toys are indeed alive. And I'm very happy for that, because Tin Toy is pretty okay, but I think what we got in Toy Story is so much more magical, even though a lot of that magic was already there in Tin Toy and Knick Knack for sure.
So yeah, I didn't actually get around to watching the really early like student kind of shorts that Chris mentioned. That was one I was planning to watch. But I did watch all the early like official Pixar shorts, and I think I agree with kind of what's been said so far. My take would be it's quite difficult to rate the early ones because of the animation, they have a really different feel. I mean, I think the first one isn't worth a great deal. It's only a couple minutes long. But I think the other four are not amazing, but they're really like fascinating insight into the journey of Pixar. I think what you see in those four generally is like a lot of like warmth and a lot of heart and a lot of kind of, like Brett was saying, sort of the way that you're able to feel for the characters who are not like, you're not always people and sometimes they're toys, various other objects. I think Luxo Jr. and Tin Toy were my favorites, and they're actually the ones that got nominated or won an Oscar as well. So even in the early days, they were, winning Oscars. I think we're quite lucky to have a really early insight into the growth of like such a big company. And I think whilst I think they're quite difficult to rate compared to the others, I think when you look at them for their animation and the time that they were made, I think they're impressive. They're at least like an enjoyable watch, I would say, all of them, apart from the first one, which is just a kind of test short, I think.
Yeah, and the first one isn't even made by Lasseter or any of the directors that would come up. The first one was made by essentially the co-founder, who was also someone working at Microsoft. He got the money from Steve Jobs. It's this, like, I guess, Silicon Valley type of early setup. He was also working in the film industry. It's Alvy Ray Smith. There's a guy who hasn't really directed anything, and he disappeared from the company very shortly after. Never did anything else with them. So that really just is like a proof of concept, I think, that Andre and Wally B. But no, I think that the other four films there that came out in the 80s, they are decent to very, very good. I rated Knick Knack and Luxo Jr. 7. I mean, I'm a harsher rater than Brett, so it's probably about the same or maybe even higher. And I mean, Luxo Jr. is almost magical because that's what ended up being Pixar's logo. It's the jumping lights. It's just in a more crass animation. I think Brett really brought home the magic in the proof of concept of early Pixar here, because what Pixar did so well early on, both in the features and here, is that by simply taking inanimate objects and doing limited animation and mimicking the movements they would make if they actually were those inanimate objects, they managed to convey feelings. Luxo Jr. is such a great example of that, because you have these lamps. I mean, everyone, if you haven't seen it, everyone's seen the opening of Pixar where the lamps are jumping around and crushing the ball, etc. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. But just with those movements, exactly by like the very limited movement of what they're allowed to do, and a few squeaks, which matches what the lamp could make. They managed to essentially convey like a parent-child or adult-child dynamic, where the kid is super excited, playing with the ball. The adult is a bit frustrated. Like, you managed to convey all of that in just a few minutes. It's fun, it's lovely, and it's memorable. And then, as Brett also said, they managed to do exactly the same thing in Red Stream, where you have this little unicycle who has a dream, and again, it's the same thing. He dreams of being in a circus act, the clown. That clown looks terrifying. But the actual unicycle is animated in a very, very loving way that's similar to Toy Story. And then you also have Tin Toy and Knick Knack. Again, with all of these toys, it's pretty much Toy Story with slightly more crass animation. And yeah, the toys, you can feel their emotions, and it manages to tell a thorough, consistent story. I mean, really, I mean, if you watch Knick Knack and like that mini story there, that could easily have been one of those Toy Story tunes that come out today, where they follow a side character. So yeah, no, I think they really managed to build up. They managed to cement themselves as, this is what we do well, this is what we can do. And then they also managed to, from these shorts, get the inspiration to kickstart Pixar, create their best series, the best trilogy. If I mean, I know there's 4 and now there's going to be 5, but the trilogy is fantastic of Toy Story. So yeah, no, I mean, a lot. My hats off to those 80s shorts and what they managed to build up for sure. And then, as Adam mentioned earlier, there was this big gap between 1999 and 1997 when Gary's Game came out. That's one of those first truly like standalone magical short films. I've been talking for a while, so I'm just going to transition over to my co-host, and the topic will be those standalone cinematic shorts that were often released and shown before their features. We can probably dive into Gary's Game first, but what are your impressions of those standalone features that pretty much stretch from Gary's Game in 97 to Bow in 2018? I don't think there's been anything else that's standalone since then, at least not according to Wikipedia, though a few of the SparkShorts did air cinematically as well, as did some of the co-op films. But yeah, what are your favorite standalone shorts, and how do you think they compare to their feature films?
Right, so just because I like stats, we got 15 shorts that they did between 1997 and 2018. And I think, yeah, like I said in the intro, had I only watched these shorts, I think I would have really enjoyed much more the last few days in terms of watching them. I think that they are overall, kind of like Brett, but just for this sort of section, I gave almost all the shorts a 7 or higher. Just to start on a slightly negative note, I think Lava was the one, out of all those 15 shorts, Lava was the one that stood out as being weaker. I mean, I told Chris this story before, but I watched it on YouTube and then I assumed I'd watched the wrong thing. So I eventually subscribed to Disney Plus, and it turned out it was the same short. I just didn't get that one. But overall, I think they're really strong. I think Jerry's Game is one of the absolute strongest. I think it's amazing, 1997, their first, like after their initial 5 in the 80s, I think Jerry's Game was a pretty amazing sign of like some of the shorts that were to come. And I don't think many of the later ones topped that one. I think Day and Night, that's probably my favorite of them all. I think feels a little bit more like some of their feature films in terms of the ideas that they're exploring, the contrast between the Day and Night. Yeah, there's a lot I think are strong. Partly Cloudy, Piper, Lou. Personally, I think a lot of the later ones are still just as strong as the early ones. And I think everything from the 90s, 97 to 2018, I'd rate most of them at least as good as or better than the 80s shorts, other than Lava, which was just, yeah, I just didn't get that one. And it's pretty noticeable as well in this era, like you had about something like 8 or 9 of the shorts, I think, were nominated or won. Actually, sorry, almost all of them, I think, won an Oscar or were nominated. I think you've got about, just looking, I think there's maybe about 2 of them that didn't get nominated for an Oscar, so obviously they were like...
Yeah, Lava.
Yeah, I think Lava and, I think there's a couple more that didn't get nominated.
The Blue Umbrella and Partly Cloudy only ended up being shortlisted.
So basically you got 12 out of the 15. So you could kind of see it as a kind of golden era, I guess, for the shorts in terms of like critical acclaim. I mean, 12 out of 15 shorts getting nominated or winning. I mean, not that many of them won. I think it's 4 based on what I'm looking at. But, you had incredible critical acclaim. And I think my memory of that kind of time, the sort of 2000s, 2010s and that, I think what defined Pixar as well wasn't just the feature films. I think when I used to watch Pixar and really got into them, I always, you thought of the short films and you kind of treated them differently to how you treat other short films. They were seen as a lot more important. I think it added a lot of value to the studio overall. So I think that they were really quite prominent in the shorts. They weren't just sort of like little add-ons. I think they were really seen as like, an important part of Pixar. So I think I did really enjoy watching them all, and I think almost all of them are really strong and are at least entertaining. I think some of the good ones, Pixar has like some of the good ones are the kind of lighter ones. You've got some really light kind of funny ones. Then you've got ones exploring some sort of more serious topics. But I think early on they were quite strong at kind of comedy and kind of lighter shorts covering sort of bounding films like that. I think they were quite sort of funny and quite lighthearted.
I absolutely love Jerry's Game. That and Piper from these original shorts are probably both within my top 10 favorite shorts of all time. And I've enjoyed Jerry's Game since I first saw it, I want to say about 20 years ago. I just found it really fun and creative and enjoyable. For the rest, there are ups and downs. Piper, I was lucky enough to see on the big screen, and I think it was 3D, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm not sure. But it was just phenomenal, and the animation was absolutely amazing. And it's a cute story as well, and I just remember after seeing that, it's like, even if the movie turned out to be terrible, it was worth it just for seeing the short. And I don't know if it's more of reputation or if it's actuality, but I feel like for a lot of us, Pixar brought back the idea of having a short play before a feature film in cinemas. And then there's like that extra magic of like something you're not necessarily going to be able to see easily unless you go see it in the movies. Because when feature films get released, they're usually on, growing up, it would be VHS or DVD, or now it's streaming, but you wouldn't necessarily have shorts get the same distribution afterwards. So the only chance you might get to see some of these for a while would have been on the big screen. Nowadays, you can pretty much find anything you want on YouTube or other streaming services. For the other ones, they're mostly good for me. I didn't really care for Lifted, actually. I just didn't connect with the story. It was kind of played too much for laughs without the heart in it. I didn't mind Lava. It was just, okay, it's a cute little song story, but nothing terrible. So I don't quite get your animosity against that one. And I did see that one in theaters. And I do remember being a little bit confused. It's like, oh, wait, what's this? Oh, okay. It's kind of cute. And it kind of accurately displays how volcanoes are created, which is kind of interesting for kids to see. And I think it's got some charm to it. But the others, I think there's some good ones, and I think they're really varied. They're not all the same formula that sometimes you see with other things. And I think they really have given the opportunity to showcase some of the talent in the company and to foster that talent. Because, for example, Peter Sohn, who directed Partly Cloudy, Enrico Casarosa, who directed La Luna, and Domi Shi, who directed Bao, they've all gone on since to direct feature films. So I think it's perhaps not used quite as an incubator, but it's definitely giving the opportunity to new talent to test out their ideas and to work on their concepts and see, hey, is this something they've really got, and then allow them to move forward into building their own first feature film as well. Aside from Jerry's Game and Piper, I think I enjoyed The Blue Umbrella a lot. It was just kind of sweet. I don't even think there's any dialogue in that one, but it just, again, inanimate object, no dialogue. It seems to be what Pixar does well. And it's just a really cute story. I think a bunch of these I would like to rewatch because they have been a while, such as For the Birds or Bounden. But overall, I'm really happy with the original shorts, and I'm looking forward to them getting back to creating some more of these because I think they're really fun.
I think I agree with most of what you guys were saying. I mean, what is impressive is that the 4 shorts that won Best Short at the Academy, they were Gary's Game and For the Birds, which were the 2 first, and then it was Piper and Bao, which were 2 of the 3 last. So essentially, they had a very strong consistency. Oh, I should also mention that Tin Toy actually won back in the 80s as well. I really agree with Adam over Brett about Lava. I mean, it is charming, but that's one of the few films among these theatrical shorts that really just felt completely and utterly made for kids. I think what's generally great to Pixar is that they're great for kids and adults. And essentially, Lava is a song. It's a volcano singing a song about essentially how volcanoes are made and saying, I lava you over and over and over again. Like Adam, I was very confused when I first started watching it. It didn't feel like Pixar. And yeah, it is one of their weakest, though I don't think it's terrible. I actually had a similar reaction to Bounden, which is also one that's just led by a song throughout. So those 2 films are fairly similar, though that doesn't have an educational message unless it's about sharing of sheep and I guess with a feel-good message about feeling better about yourself. But yes, overall, I think that this series, if you want to call it a series, because they're completely unrelated, essentially, has so much variety. You have Gary's Game, which is one of the absolute best. It just has a man playing chess against himself, and he's goes from one side of the table to the other, playing both sides just by taking off his glasses. It's cheeky, it's fun, and it's kind of like a warm-up in a way for Up, if you will, where you have an older male protagonist. It's not really what you expect from an animation studio. And then, like their last one with Bao, which also won Best Short, that's just like essentially a metaphor for a mother giving up her son and her son becoming an adult. and it's also done in just a creative, fun, loving way. And there's so much variety here. Like Piper, which Brett highlighted as one of the best. Like that's very different animation. It's about a young bird essentially becoming confident, and it's the animation is a bit more. I'm not sure if realistic is the word, but it's I guess more realistic than the more traditional Pixar animation, and it's lovely too. I didn't actually care that much for the blue umbrella. I mean, it's perfectly fine. And of course, inanimate objects is what Pixar does best. But I didn't really like the fact that they just had the umbrellas and they had smiley faces on them, like just added in, like all of the the buildings around them and all these things. There they used what they often do in their older shorts, like to use screws, etc., for eyes and things like that, and that really worked. But the fact that they just like kind of just drew on a smiley face on all of the umbrellas, or specifically the protagonist and the love interest, if you will, that felt a bit odd. And I'm a bit disappointed that none of you mentioned Presto, because we talked about this leading up to the episode, that Adam found like an old comment of mine where I wrote, I think it was 12 or 14 years ago, that Presto was one of the 10 best shorts I'd ever seen. It's not quite there anymore, and I rewatched it. It went down from my favorite, but it's probably my favorite of these shorts. This is pretty much just like an old school bunny versus magician comedy that just ramps up the tricks. And it's utterly delightful. So my favorites would probably be Presto, Gary's Game, and Lou. The one about Lost and Found, and which is also kind of like an anti-bullying campaign almost. That was also very good late theatrical short from Pixar.
Didn't mention Presto because I knew I didn't want to steal your thunder. I knew you would have something to say about it, and I don't really care for Presto. It's all right.
I just wanted to quickly jump in and say my top ones and bottom ones, but I think I might break Chris's heart a little bit here. So, like my top 5 would have been Day and Night, Jerry's Game, Partly Cloudy, Piper, and Lou. So I totally back up what you guys have said about Piper. I think the animation style was great. I really liked Lou as well. I don't know, maybe because I got bullied for a while at school, so it kind of like, the anti-bullying message, maybe that resonated with me more. But the bottom 5 for me, like not in any order way, apart from like Lava's bottom. And to be honest, I agree as well with Lifted. Lifted would be in my bottom 5. I didn't really get that one. And then I would have Presto and One Man Band, which I know are really popular, but I still like them. And then I don't know. I'm not sure why else. I have at least a bottom 4 basically. I would say a bottom 4: Presto, Lifted, One Man Band, and Lava.
That's perfect.
It's not that I don't like them. It's just I never quite got your your love for Presto, but I think it's one of the more popular ones probably overall.
Well, I get that, because Presto is essentially, I mean, it's not Bugs Bunny obviously, but it's more in a traditional animation sense of just two adversaries going at it, like Tom and Jerry, etc. as well. It's a very different kind of short for them than what we've done in Pixar's style. So it's like when you compare it to all of these other films, it's very out of left field.
Yeah, and I think maybe like what you're saying about one against the other is kind of maybe why One Man Band doesn't work so well for me as well. Some of them feel a little bit like they've got one kind of trick and they're kind of using it for 7 minutes. And it's not that I don't like them, I just think they're a little bit weaker. And I'm glad that Brett mentioned Lifted, because I don't know, Chris, what did you think of Lifted? Because
No, it was one of the worst as well. Yeah, no.
That was really quite weak.
Yeah, my least favorite would be Lava, and then I might actually say Boundin, and then Lifted as the third worst. I mean, I didn't care for it. I mean, it's not the one that feels very made for kids, and it opens with a bit of a Close Encounters semi-parody, and then it's just just this teenage alien screwing up. It's very basic, a little bit childish, and it didn't hit home for me. Those 3, and then Blue Umbrella would probably be my bottom 4, I'd say.
I really like Blue Umbrella. Probably be like
all right
for me. And funnily enough, I actually like Boundin', and like I know it's like song and it's kind of stupid, but somehow that one worked. In fact, when I watched them when I was younger, Boundin' was like my favorite. And then when I rewatched them, I had to like reduce the rating a bit, but I still find it really charming. But yeah, I had it up at like an 8 or a 9 or something originally, maybe even a 9, and then I down it, like I put it down to like about 7.5 or something. But I still find that quite charming. And yeah, I'm with Brett on Blue Umbrella. It's not my favorite, but it would probably be about my sixth favorite. I think some of them are quite charming, and that's one of them without being my absolute favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I am not going to agree with you there, but perfectly fair. Oh, and my sixth favorite would probably be either Partly Cloudy, Day for Night, or La Luna, which we didn't actually talk about at all. La Luna is a pretty good one. I think we can switch from our now pretty much overt positivity about theatrical shorts, where they created pretty much unique worlds for each and every single one. They feel special. They feel very invested in. What I heard from you a lot, and what I agreed with throughout, and this is what I've warned a lot of our listeners about going in, is that the feature-related shorts, they're usually not that good. And in fact, many of them just feel like a DVD fodder, which many of them were. Or like deleted scenes or like post-credit scenes. We were not very impressed during this rewatch spree. In fact, I didn't even watch all of them. I know my probably least favorite of all of the shorts we watched, except for that very, very first one in '84, is one of these feature-related shorts, so I'll reveal that later. But one of them actually got nominated for Best Short at the Oscars as well. That was Mike's New Car. And what was your reaction to finding out that Mike's New Car had been nominated for Best Short, Adam?
Okay, when we're talking about the feature-related shorts, so the kind of individual ones rather than the ones where they do like Cars tunes and things like that, it's not that I hate them or think they're terrible or anything. I think it's just binge watching the feature related shorts doesn't work that well. I think if you're gonna watch the feature related shorts, you're better off watching the feature films and then straight after watching Mike's New Car or watching any of them, because I think they were intended generally as like DVD extras, and I think that comes across. So I think if you really love one of the films, you'll probably like the short that comes with it. I just don't think that they're that interesting in general as individual shorts. They're so tied to the film. If you've never watched the feature films, I'm not sure you get much out of most of them. So, and with Mike's New Car, like I don't think it's even one of the worst of the feature ones at all. I'm just blown away by the fact it got nominated for an Oscar, because if you look at all the other ones, Pixar shorts that have been nominated or won, okay, there's ones like Lifted, which none of us like that much. But I don't understand how, alongside the sort of original standalone shorts, you suddenly get Mike's New Car, which is just like a mildly amusing extra to Monsters, Inc. Like, I'm absolutely stunned that got nominated for an Oscar. And it's not because it's an awful short. There's nothing that elevates it above any of the other feature-related shorts. And it's a complete mystery to me that one of them, like, it's just, there's no consistency. Like, the other ones, you've got like 15 shorts, 12 of them got nominated or won. And that makes sense because they were all, consistent quality generally. And then suddenly, yeah, Mike's New Car. Like, you got all these random shorts attached to like The Incredibles, Ratatouille and stuff. And then, Mike's New Car gets an Oscar nomination. It's like, all I can think is like, it was the first one. And maybe when it was the first one, all the other ones kept getting nominated and winning. And maybe it was like an early one and it was seen in a different light. But looking back and watching them all, there's absolutely nothing whatsoever that makes it stand above the other feature-related shorts. And yeah, that's me done.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth pointing out there that you're absolutely right about the timeline here, because Mike's New Car came out after Gary's Game and For the Birds and before Boundin'. So the last two shorts had won. While this was, I think it was actually intended for a DVD extra, they did a cinema release where they tied it with, I think it was Roger Rabbit, like a re-release of Roger Rabbit that ran for 2 weeks just to get it qualified. And I think they just had built up such a name for themselves at that point, and they were seen as, so elevated about so much other animation that they managed to squeeze in through that. I mean, there are actually some feature-related ones that I would actually call either really good. One I would actually call great. I'll get to that later as well. So yeah, some of these other ones are better, but at the same time, I mean, Mike's new car, I do think is better than Lifted. I do think it's better than Bounden. So I mean, it's not completely out of left field either, especially given how this really was the first of its kind, if you will.
So for me, I've seen all of them except for the marine life interviews from Finding Dory. I didn't get around to that one, but I've seen all the other ones, and I think your point about the qualification run in theaters for Mike's New Car explains why that one got nominated as opposed to the rest, because home releases aren't eligible. I like some of them. I don't care for others. I find them forgettable. I think some of the fun ones are Bernie, and I think Bernie might be the best example of what could be done really well about these feature-related shorts. Is it gives the primary focus to a side character who you may not even remember from the feature film, but in such a way that it's like, oh, I kind of wish we'd had a film about that person or that character. And then you get what you want. And I think Bernie's really fun, especially if you watch it right after you see WALL-E, in the sense that can see the points in the story of WALL-E and then how it relates to the story of Bernie. And I like the callback a lot. Other than that, a lot of them are fun. It's just, if you like the feature film, you probably want to go in and revisit that world. Others are just kind of lackluster. But I think the one that surprised me the most is actually Your Friend the Rat. I didn't think I was actually going to enjoy it, but it turned out to be one of my favorite ones. And I think you mentioned, it was you, Chris, who mentioned it's a callback to a style of animation or information show from the 50s, which I wasn't aware of. But I just quite like the style, and I thought it was a really fun short that caught me off guard. Aside from that, I think I enjoyed Incredible Ones the most, maybe just because they're the most fun and slightly unhinged. And like Jack and Auntie Edna are definitely two of the favorite characters from that film. So to see each of them get their own kind of spotlight was nice. And then also with Mr. Incredible and Pals, or I think it was also released under another name. Yeah, The Adventures of Mr. Incredible. I know it's also based on another style of animation, which I wasn't familiar with, but I liked the idea that they put together of the characters commenting on themselves, and it's almost like two competing narration tracks going on. And it's something different for what you're used to, and I like that they keep us guessing. And I don't know if I have any disappointing ones from this batch. No, this is kind of some really great ones, and then just kind of, oh yeah, that was a film. And then you just kind of forgot that it existed. But overall, I'd still say I have positive feelings of this batch of short films overall.
Yes, so Your Friend Rat was actually my favorite of this set, and it's the one I would call great. I mean, I think it's so damn inventive. It mixes a myriad of different animation styles. I mean, at one point you go into video game graphics. You got 2D, you got like so many different types of 2D, you got different kinds of 3D, you got like several types of different sketches, you even got some photography in there. They make a reference to Francois Truffaut. They go into silent film for a little while. It's all over the place, but it's essentially like a hyper comedic, jokey essay film of sort, like semi-experimental, just telling of rats and humans through the ages, lots of focus on the Black Plague. You have the narration from the rats in the standard Pixar style, but then as they tell the story, it just spins out of control and it goes everywhere, and it's really fun, and it's just so dynamic. It blows my mind that it was just like an extra for a DVD, essentially. Like, it's so well done, and it's one of those that this couldn't have been the deleted scene, obviously, and that's usually the case. Like, if you look at Burn E, which you highlighted as one of the best, Brett, like that was really good, and I thought that the way that they developed Burn E, in a very similar way to WALL-E, that's brilliant. He works so well, and again, inanimate objects being given emotion is one of the things Pixar does best. It really won out here. But Burn E is also one of those films that doesn't make sense if you haven't seen WALL-E. I mean, it's a DVD extra. Like, it literally intercuts with the film, so you see where Burn E is along with the events of the film. It works, but it's also off. And like I mentioned earlier, some of the very worst Pixar shorts are here. In fact, the very worst for me. And it's sad that it's the worst because the concept is so fun. It's George and AJ, and it makes sense. It is the worst. This is a tie-in for Up, but it was not actually a DVD extra. It was a giveaway for people who bought it. I think it was on iTunes or some other digital purchase. They would get this short. And it's not 3D animation. It is not even like decent 2D animation. It's these like the mouths barely move, the characters barely move. It's that animation is so limited. It feels like a very low budget student film project. Like it's borderline Tux and Fanny. If anyone's seen Tux and Fanny, I mean that's not a student film, but it's like that. Okay, that's more video game, and it's maybe not the best comparison, but it's just so basic. That it ruins the comedic timing. Like it's about these guys who work for the elderly home that they were meant to send Carl to in Up, and all these old people get inspired by what Carl did, and they start escaping with their houses in different creative ways and wreaking havoc on George and AJ. But because of the limited animation, there's just the comedic timing is so off and it falls flat. And yeah, no, I just wasn't happy with that one. And the other ones are pretty good. I didn't care for Doug's special mission either, but that's also just because the talking dogs in Up is my least favorite thing about Up. Up is great, but that thing like that really just brings it down a little bit for me. And Doug's special mission is all about the talking dogs and that type of humor, which again didn't really work for me. Some of the incredible ones are pretty good though, like Jack Attack is really fun. So yeah, I'm not going to disagree there. But yeah, the quality of these are all over the place. I would say mostly it's just decent. You have the big standout with Your Friend the Rat. You have the huge letdown with George and AJ. Then the rest are somewhere in between, I'd say. Though I didn't get around to watching all of these either because of just the mixed quality.
Yeah, I was just going to add to all of that. I think my favorites. So I really like Your Friend the Rat as well. I think mainly because they're trying to do something different rather than just making it a little add-on. I also really like Exploring the Reef, which is similar in the sense that they're doing something really different. You have Jean-Michel Cousteau, who's he's doing a narration, and then you have the Finding Nemo characters interrupting him and annoying him. And it was just really fun because it wasn't just a sort of little add-on to the film. It was a sort of more of a fun extra short. I agree on Bernie, which I think was one of the stronger ones. I mean, I'm not saying these are that great, but I liked Riley's First Date, but mainly because I like Inside Out so much, so I just thought it worked. I thought Lamp Life was fairly interesting as well, just because I love Toy Story, and it was kind of filling in the gaps between the different films. It was Little Bo Peep's story. I liked, Ciao Alberto, the Luca one. I liked quite a few of them, but sometimes I liked them more, I think, just because I liked the feature film. And then in terms of really weak ones, I thought Miss Fritter's Racing School was my least favorite, but I'll qualify that by saying by that point I'd seen about 2 million Cars shorts and was just getting sick of it. George and AJ, yeah, exactly what Chris said. And Marine Life Interviews is literally a 2-minute short. It's 2 minutes. It's basically Creature Comforts, the old Aardman kind of studios one. And I think a lot of the weakest ones are really short. So Miss Fritter's Racing School, Dante's Lunch, Marine Life Interviews, they're all 2 or 3 minutes long, and they're really impossible to kind of rate highly. But I think overall it's decent. It's just you got fewer highs and more lows, I would say, definitely, than the original shorts.
I think that also makes sense too, because with the exception of that cinema run for Mike's New Car, these are all just sort of DVD extras, so they're not necessarily going to have the same budget that they would throw into something that's going to be released on the big screens in theaters to wider audiences. They know that the people buying their DVDs are going to be the ones who already enjoy the films that they put out. And I think all of these films, these shorts, they're on the DVD of their associated films. They're already immersed in that world. So I think there's less risk for them. So maybe they take less chances and they attempt to do less things that maybe would interest us more. And they're just more of hey, let's put something little together for the kids. That also, it's something new, so it incentivizes people to purchase it instead of just watching it again or renting it out. And it makes sense from a business point of view, I think. And I think it's also been used for giving some of their other animators a chance to try their hand at directing and seeing if there's any potential there that they want to foster. Now, looking at the names, the only one I think who's gone on to direct a feature film is Josh Cooley, who did your George and AJ, who neither of you liked, but he also did Riley's First Date. So kind of interesting. And then he ended up directing Toy Story 4. So, and I don't mind George and AJ. I think it's kind of fun. I root for the old people, and the animation style doesn't bother me.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, I think when you're watching the original sort of theatrical ones, I feel like they're sort of fair game for criticism and for sort of analysing more deeply. But I find it difficult to criticise too strongly the feature-related shorts because their purpose is, like you said, they're not there to be these incredible kind of new original ideas. They're fun little extras. So I think watching the original ones, like binge watching the original ones works quite well. Binge watching the feature-related ones doesn't really work well because of the nature of them. But I don't think you can really go deep into criticism because, I think you have to judge the shorts on what they're trying to achieve. And I think the aims of the feature-related shorts are very, very different to the aims of the original, like, theatrical ones. So yeah, I think they are nice as a little extra on a film. And some of them are better than that, some of them are worse. But in general, they're there to add a little bit extra to a film that someone already likes, that they bought the DVD for.
Absolutely. And I think we talked about this in the feature episode, but one of the attributes that we really liked about Pixar is the ability to speak to both children and adults at the same time in the same film, sometimes with the same line of dialogue. Whereas with the shorts, I think sometimes they skew more towards adults, sometimes more kids. But I think we've just kind of come to expect that there's going to be something for adults, where with the short films, sometimes it's purely for the kids, and that's okay. And we just have to resign ourselves to the fact that not everything's going to be made for those of us over the age of 7.
That's actually a very good segue into the next collection as well, because there's something else that's feature related but weren't released as DVD extras, and that's a little something called Pixar Popcorn. A series of essentially 1 or 2 minute shorts for Disney Plus, where honestly the thing I liked the most about these shorts were the way the intro changed for each one, and the lamps were popping things into different kinds of popcorn. Popcorn was coming out from different places, because I was not a huge fan here. I mean, again, they're so short that, you can't really do anything special. Well, technically you can, but it's harder. There's some of them are enjoyable. Like, you have the first one, which is To Fitness and Beyond, which is just Buzz Lightyear working out, and it's like all the other toys are working out with him, and there's some fun stuff along the way. But that's what they are. Almost none of them have dialogue. Then you suddenly have 2, like, a subsection called Fluffy Stuff with Ducky and Bunny, which is about 2 characters from Toy Story 4 talking. And then the others are from different movies. Like, they're all over the place. Like, Brett said that, it's okay that some of these things are for kids below 7, and I think pretty much all of these are. Like, these are Disney Plus. I think they're specifically designed for kids. Like, these short little popcorn, you just popping them out. But then you have something like Soul of the City, which is just this moody piece, like a little bit of piano playing in the back, and then you have all of the various characters from Soul, and it's just like a moment of them just being there somewhere in the city as it fades from one to another. It's in a mini city portrait, and that just doesn't feel like it's for kids at all. So what was your overall takeaways from Pixar Popcorn?
I actually have not seen any of them. I wasn't even aware of their existence until we started preparing for this episode. So I can't really tell you anything about them, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, like the feature-related shorts, it's really hard to analyze the popcorn ones. What's interesting, like what Chris said, there is a video on YouTube which is just all the intros to the Pixar popcorn shorts, and that alone is like 1 minute 42 seconds. And that is by far, I think, the most valuable thing that came out of it. And it backs up what we were saying earlier about, I think, the strength of some of the early shorts and how that one character, Luke So Jr., is still prominent in everything that he did. So that was really interesting. But yeah, I think they're all just made for little kids. And when it's like 2 minutes, you get about 1 minute, 30 seconds of content. I basically found almost nothing of value. I mean, the Soul one was one of my favorites, but when I say favorites, I'm still talking like I still didn't like any of them. I guess my criticism is sometimes it feels like because I've watched so many of the Pixar shorts over the last few days, sometimes I feel like they've just churned out extra content. And in this case, they've kind of turned out one of very little worth, but because it's a Pixar name, people are still going to watch it. And like, it's hard to criticize a lot. I'm not going to criticize the shorts themselves when they're 2 minutes long, but I do think if Pixar were going to put out something like that, they could have put a bit more effort in. They could have made them like 4 or 5 minutes. They could have given people a bit more than just what I saw as completely pointless, like shorts with very, very little content.
I think I agree there, Adam. I mean, the whole purpose of them was that they would be like 1 minute or 1.5 minute. Because like in the intro and the credits, they probably take up a lot. They might just be like 60, 70 seconds in total. But it really did just feel like they added content for the sake of adding content. Like you can make an elaborate or fun skit in 90 seconds. It's very, very possible. And here they're just like, I think they just spitballed some ideas and they did it like, here's dancing cars, or the unparalleled parking short, which is probably the most childish there, where they have this little lamp going on like ding, 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 ding to show if they parked well or not. That has to be for the under 7 or even under 4 demographic. So yeah, no, I feel like they just wanted to add some extra content for Disney Plus, and they really didn't put a lot of effort into most of them. The Soul one, I think they put some effort into, but that just feels out of bounds with the rest. And I mean, like the Incredibles ones too, like just the people, like the Incredibles fighting over a cookie, like that's a fun little mini thing. It has a similar feeling to some of the feature-related ones, where just like, oh, this could have been a post-credit one or a DVD extra kind of thing. But yeah, it's just very, very slight. But then again, I think that's what it was intended as.
My top two are actually the Soul one and the Cookie one. Not that they were great, but because the Cookie one at least felt like a shorter version of the feature-related shorts with a little bit of like fun rather than just, oh yes, here's a character doing the same thing for 1 minute. It was just completely like mindless, most of them. But at least the Cookie one had the Cookie one made you laugh a tiny bit, you know? The other ones, it was like, I could have just made them, you know? It was really like, anyway, I'm not going to criticize too much. I just don't like the concept.
No, I completely agree. But luckily, their theatrical style shorts, in a way, did continue just under a different label, and a very mixed label with what's called the SparkShorts series. And it's going to be interesting to hear what you guys think about this selection, because 2 of them were nominated for Best Short. They aired theatrically. So Kitbull aired with Turning Red and Burrow aired with Soul. A lot of the others were just released on Disney Plus. So it's kind of like in distribution, it's all over the place. In style, it's all over the place. So the backstory here is that Pixar animators just get 6 months. They get a very low budget. They just like go and make something. And a lot of them are either personal or anecdotal. And at least to me, they feel very different from the old feature-related shorts. Some of these shorts go for 2D. Like, we have to talk about that. There's Pixar shorts now, thanks to the SparkShorts series, that are in 2D. And in fact, 2 of those 2D ones are Kitbull and Burrow that screen theatrically with big Pixar films, which is, again, like, odd that they picked those, but those are also, honestly, my 2 favorites from this set as well. So, I mean, well picked. But it's a very, very odd mix of shorts. How do you guys feel about the SparkShorts?
Yeah, so I'd seen the Oscar-nominated ones at some point when they came out. So Kitbull and Burrow. And I think they're both very, very good. I think Kitbull I love. I mean, maybe it's just because it's an animal short or whatever, but it's kind of heartwarming and it's a nice story. That's one of my favorite shorts by Pixar, if I'm honest. It's in the top few for me. Burrow, again, I think that's really good as well. They're both animal ones. They're both kind of charming, and they're just something that I liked a lot about them. But I think they stand out a little bit from the other shorts because it's a weird one because I like and support the message of the Spark Short series. They're kind of exploring like identity, and they're exploring LGBT issues, they're exploring race, they're kind of exploring really important social issues, and they're all stuff that I support, that I'm glad that they're getting made, that kids are watching shorts with these messages. I just felt like quality wise, like they'd gone for this message, which I agree with, a really positive kind of message, but I felt a lot of them were a bit soulless. They were a bit like almost like they were trying too hard to sort of, the purpose of the short was more about the message, which I agreed with, but it was almost like they focused so much on the message of the short that they didn't really put that much into the quality of it or the actual sort of originality of it. I liked Out as well, which, is a story about a guy coming out. And I actually kind of liked Loop, which was, my sister was disabled. And like, I'm always like like when there's a story or a film that features kind of disabilities or that kind of thing, I always think I'm kind of like vulnerable to liking them more because of that. So even then, I didn't think it was amazing. The rest, I mean, I thought they were fairly lifeless and fairly like soulless. Thought they were really average. And if they weren't Pixar, I'm not certain they'd have as much attention because I was really pretty disappointed, if I'm honest, with most of them because I expected so much more from Pixar. They weren't awful, but they were kind of like sanitized. It was, yeah, just a bit of a disappointment.
And here comes Brett to disagree with both of you. So I actually like the Spark Shorts series, and I look forward to each one being released, even if individual films aren't necessarily the greatest. I really like the concept of what they're doing. And I think it's important to highlight as well that the directors here, the animators, they only get 6 months and they don't have a lot of budget to work on this. So holding them up to the same standard as, the original shorts that they can be developing for a couple of years, it kind of doesn't make sense to me. And I'm pretty sure I saw the first 3 that were released. So that's Pearl, Smash and Grab, and Kit Bull. When they were released on YouTube, before I realized what the Spark Shorts thing was, they were just kind of random shorts I stumbled upon, and I quite enjoyed them for what they were. And I think it's only the rest of the one, those first 3 feel kind of generic to me. Maybe Pearl not so much. That's a bit more of a message film, but Smash and Grab and Kit Bull, they're just like cute, fun stories that don't really have any specificity about them. Whereas I feel like Float Onwards, those stories feel personal. So I find it strange that one of you call them soulless, because each one I can see very clearly what the director was trying to do and how, if you would call it quote unquote a message film, what that message is or what that personal connection would be to the director. And I quite like that they're willing to let their employees work on these and take these ideas and put them out there and get them exposure to the greater world and share their stories. And I don't know if it was Spark Shorts stories or if it was the co-op ones later on. I think it's Spark Shorts. I thought I read somewhere that they were focusing on trying to help storytellers who wouldn't necessarily get that opportunity to tell their story. And I like that idea. Even if the execution isn't always the best, I don't want them to stop. I want to see more Spark Shorts. I want to uncover more hidden gems. I've actually seen all of them. I would say that my favorite would be Out, followed closely by Loop. I quite like that one. And I liked 20-something. I thought it was cute, and I thought it was a really fun take on like self-doubt and anxiety. Because even now, as an adult and having been an adult for quite some times, I still feel like inside my brain I'm a kid. And there's a dissonance. So I thought that was a really fun way of putting everything together. Kit Bull, Pearl, Smash and Grab, I all quite liked. Same with Nona. I thought it was a fun take of breaking the stereotype of what a grandmother is supposed to be. Burrow was cute. I think the only ones I really didn't care for that much were Wind. It was a bit too abstract for me, and I was like, I don't get the backstory, how they got to where they are. And yeah, it's touching and all. I was like, well, I needed more. Though the animation was quite cool, and maybe it was intended more as an animation experiment as opposed to a narrative experiment, which is fine. And then Self, the most recent one. I definitely understood the point they were trying to make. And I thought it was kind of cool with the wooden character wanting to fit in. I think everyone's felt like an outsider at one point, and you're trying to do everything possible to fit in with those around you, and that usually doesn't work. It It didn't connect with me the way I thought the animation style was interesting, especially the contrast between the wooden character and the, I guess, metallic or golden characters, whatever they were. But yeah, didn't quite connect with me as much as the others did. But I'm sure there are people out there where it really spoke to them, and I'm glad that it exists.
Yeah, I guess I just want to quickly respond. I mean, I think it's difficult because I binge watched like 80 plus shorts in a week, and you're jumping from theatrical kind of shorts to DVD shorts to SparkShorts, and I certainly ended up kind of judging them all in the same way. And I also got a bit burnt out from having watched, like the SparkShorts were one of the last ones I watched. So I think that affected my opinion, and it does help that you're giving context because I didn't really know anything about the budgets or the time constraints or anything. So that makes a lot of sense. I guess soulless is probably the wrong word, but I was just disappointed with the execution because I felt like I really backed the concepts. I really backed the ideas from almost all of them. I got the idea, and I would say like Loop and Out really worked for me. And then, Burrow and Kitbill really worked, but they were more fun ones rather than sort of important message. I guess because I really backed the message and I really backed the kind of concept, I felt a little bit let down by the final product and the execution. But like I said, I'm glad that these are shorts that Pixar are producing. I'm glad that young people were growing up and they're seeing these ones about disability. They're seeing these ones about LGBT issues. They're seeing ones about identity. And I think it's really important that they get made. I just think judging it purely in a kind of critical kind of like trying to analyze them, I don't think their quality overall is close to the older shorts for most of them. But yeah, it does help a lot that you're giving context because perhaps the reason I didn't like the end result as much was because of spending less money or giving them less time. But just to be clear, I'm happy they're getting made and I'm glad they're getting seen. And I read online, there's lots of positive opinions. Just for me, watching them alongside the other ones, most of them didn't quite work. And I felt a bit disappointed given that I agreed with them at this sort of point in the concept. I felt a little bit disappointed by like the quality of as a viewer, basically.
That's fair. And I think maybe this is just a warning. Don't binge watch 80 shorts in a week. And I think it's only natural to compare them, absolutely. But I think what's important here as well is these were not released as Pixar shorts. They specifically created a new brand, SparkShorts, to create that distinction. And at least for me, I don't watch these shorts through necessarily the Pixar lens. For me, it's the Pixar brand for here is an indication that, hey, this is something worthwhile and this is something worth going for because Pixar has rarely disappointed me in the past. But I'm not holding up to the same standard that I would a theatrically released Pixar short because I see its different name and its different circumstances. So it's, I guess I went in with tempered expectations. And because I saw these spread out over time shortly after release instead of all at once, I'm able to separate them more, which I think can definitely affect the viewing experience.
Yeah, thanks. I think had we had more time to prepare, we kind of found out this episode got confirmed about a week before we recorded. I think had I read a bit more, and I think the way I watched them probably didn't help. But yeah, I think the most important thing, I guess, is because they have the Pixar label, I think my expectations were higher. Yeah, so I think that kind of went against them a little bit for me. But I'm still glad that they're getting put out. And if it's probably a good thing that the Pixar label's on them, so you're going to get far more people watching them. And hopefully the message of them, the sort of positive kind of concept and message, hopefully that comes across to people and has an impact on especially like younger people watching them. I think I think they're important. But I think if I view them again, I'd probably view them in a slightly different light or slightly different expectations.
Yeah, I think that the context of them being made at a low budget with a smaller crew and at such a short time frame is important. Though, I mean, I still think that all shorts should be judged equally regardless. So, no, I really wasn't too impressed
as
with
the guy who doesn't watch short films.
Yes, exactly.
Apart from Presto, which he absolutely loves.
Oh, yes. That's the gold standard, of course.
Yeah, so nothing's going to live up to Presto, that's for sure. So SparkShorts doesn't have a chance. And because it's funny how you said it was in the comment, it was in your top 10 short films, but have you actually watched more than 10 short films?
Well, I mean, I saw about 50, 60 Pixar shorts.
For this week. I think you multiplied your number of shorts watched.
But yes, no, I mean, we have the entire episode about how I'm not usually drawn to short films. But I do think like I've seen 500, 700, somewhere around there shorts. I mean, I've seen all of the shorts by, say, Agnes Varda. I've seen a huge amount of, the classic animated shorts and early Méliès shorts, etc. So it's not like I actively avoid shorts. It's just that I'm not actively. Well, I watch all of the ones, or I try to watch all of the ones that have very high esteem. Explain it like that. But I'm not going to go out of my way to watch something. Like, I have to have a very good reason to see a short, as opposed to features where I might just randomly watch whatever is on, essentially.
See, I know this is a bit of a tangent, but I'm the complete opposite with shorts, in the sense that I'm willing to watch a short if it's only, say, 5-10 minute, invest my time, even if I don't think I'm going to like it, because there's always a chance I will, and I'd rather invest 10 minutes into something that I wouldn't typically enjoy, say an experimental film, than an hour and a half. So I'm definitely much more adventurous when it comes to my short watching than I am with my feature watching. So it's interesting, that different perspective. And sorry, yeah, maybe we should get back on topic.
Definitely, and again, we have a full episode on this where we dissect my lack of interest in shorts.
Chris, tell us more about SparkShorts. What did you think of them?
So yeah, like what I was going to say is that I think we actually see a very, very solid thread from the late theatrical shorts to the SparkShorts. I think that they follow pretty much like a clear trajectory in what they're about. Because from La Luna in 2011, we suddenly started getting like semi-biographical short films from Pixar. I think La Luna is the first one that kind of comes up with like inspired by true events. It was inspired by the director spending time with his grandfather when he was young, etc., etc. And after that, you have Blue Umbrella and Lava, which were not that, but then from Sanjay's Super Team and then Lu and Bao, those shorts, they either tackled people's own past experiences and memories, or cultural identity, or they tackled a very specific social theme. So Lu was about bullying, and that was one of the ones that stood out for all of us. Bao was one of my favorites. That's about the mother trying to give up her son. It's also about Chinese American culture, and it's from Domichi, who also did Turning Red, which did a very similar thing. Then you had Sanjay's Super Team, which is about a young boy who loves superheroes, but then he kind of his father is a religious Hindu, and they kind of bond because he starts seeing the Hindu gods as superheroes as well. And there's kind of like these theatrical shorts were drawing on people's personal experiences, memories, and culture, as well as important themes. And I think that once SparkShorts was set up, that's more or less where they went really, really quickly. Like I think it was Brett who said that those first three, those are very different. So you have Pearl, Smash and Grab, and Kitbur. I mean, Kitbur is about a dog who's in dog fighting. His owner is terrible, but he forms a friendship with a very scared cat, and it's an absolutely heartwarming and heart-wrenching short. It's one of the best, even though it's in 2D, a completely different style. It reminded me of Spanish animation almost. It's absolutely lovely. And then you had Pearl and Smash and Grab, which was honestly more traditional Pixar. Like in terms of animation, like Smash and Grab is like Wall-E, future-esque. Two robots essentially stage it's almost like a slave revolt, because they're working in the engine room, they break their chains, they go out and they kill the robots that are shooting after them, and that's the short. It's a bit violent for Pixar, but you still have like that the robot, semi-choose robot dynamic, even with all the shooting. And then you have Pearl, which you have this really traditional human animation, like animation of humans. And that was also a message short about sexism in the workplace. And it's just a really wholesome short. So that's absolutely lovely. But I get what you guys mean when you say it's not at the top, obviously, and it's message driven. And then from then on, you got films that did either or personal experience or message. So you had Float, which was about the parent coming to terms with his child being different. You had Wind, which was about the immigrant experience. You had Loop, which was about a girl with autism who's non-verbal. You had Out, obviously about coming out. Then you had Burrow, which is complete opposite. It's an animated short about woodland creatures building homes on the ground. Completely separate from everything else, and it's also my favorite from the batch. But Oh well. Then you had 20-something, which you guys said earlier is about, there's thought of us still being children inside. And you had Luna about grandmother like connection. And then you had Self as well, which I haven't seen. And yeah, like these films, while they're obviously giving a lot of themselves, I do semi get what Adam meant when he said that they felt a little bit soulless. I think it's not soulless because people put themselves in it, but I think it's just the short period of putting them out from the idea to the production and doing animation. They had it's like essentially a very simple idea, and then they try to run with it, and none of them, like Lou is a great short of the theatricals. None of them, I think, got the development or the care that Lou got. And that is a slight problem. I did really like 20-something as well. I mean, that's one of the most basically animated ones there. It's 2D and it's not traditional 2D either. It's very, very simple, but that's lovely. And I think it's interesting that for me that my three favorites, Burrow, Kitbull, and 20-something, they're all 2D. The ones that are 3D felt a bit slighter, and that's probably just because less time for idea. They had to spend most of the time on the animation. Out had a really good premise. I was very disappointed with Out just because that's the one with the most basic 3D animation. It looks the ugliest, but at least it had cute dog and important story to kind of balance it out. But yeah, no, I mean, I get Brett's point. Like, don't go in expecting traditional Pixar. Like, these are much lower budget. They have much less time. They're still good. Essentially, all of these are still good. Like, even like Smash and Grab, I liked a lot. I thought Pearl was like, all of these are pretty good. I liked Wind as well, but you can really, really feel in these films that they were lower budget, they were rushed on time, and it's unfortunate because I think that if developed a little bit more, like if they had been given those 1, 2, 3 years that a lot of the other Pixar shorts were given, that they would probably have come out a lot better.
Just kind of backing up what you said, I think when I watched them, I was thinking a lot. I think I put it in the chat. Like, it felt like there was a sort of transitional period with the theatrical shorts. So the later ones, like you said, there's like Bao, Lu, Sanjay's Super Team, La Luna. I think a lot of the later shorts started to explore the kind of ideas that SparkShorts then built upon that. I think the difference is probably the budget and the time, because when you look at the theatrical ones, they were doing basically one short a year. And I think the quality of those later theatrical shorts is generally above the Spark shorts. But you can kind of see a move towards exploring kind of identity ideas. I mean, if you look at the older shorts, there's a lot of really light shorts, a bit more comical kind of shorts. I think there's a big change in the 2010s where the shorts move in a certain direction. But in my opinion, like the 2010s ones are generally, I know we talked about Lava, but in general, I think I like all of the 2010 ones. I think they're all quite strong. So I think, yeah, Pixar was moving in a certain direction in terms of exploring identity. Just maybe budget and everything meant quality might not quite be as strong. But there's still definitely some value, and there's some there's really good concepts. I think it's good to hear about differences in how they were made, because I think if you watch all the theatrical ones in a row and then you watch the Spark Short ones right after, I think you can definitely see a change in the sort of animation quality or the quality in general, I would say.
And on that topic, there was a really fun, interesting discovery this morning because there's something called a co-op program, which is another set of shorts developed by Pixar employees on their own time, using Pixar's resources, but they're independent and they own these films themselves. It's a part of the Pixar University Professional Development Program. And I didn't watch any of these films before today because I had, like, after seeing SparkShorts, I thought, okay, these are student films, like, it's going to be an extra. So I wasn't looking for them, and I even struggled finding information about them for a while. But then Adam, just like half an hour before this episode, messaged, and he said, wow, these are actually really good, some of the best. And I couldn't find the Dam Keeper, which Adam was raving about. He'll talk about that one a little bit. But just before the episode started, I found Borrowed Time and Automaton on YouTube, and I managed to cram them in. And honestly, they are better than the Spark Shorts, at least for me. I mean, Borrowed Time is the darkest I've seen Pixar go. It's a Western. It's done in fabulous 3D style. The animation style is better than in terms of 3D, it's better than any of the SparkShorts, but it's just so dark. It's essentially about guilt, and I'm not going to spoil it for you if you haven't seen it. It's about essentially a son lamenting what happened to his father while also contemplating suicide, and it's just like, wow, yeah, that's so strong. I just couldn't believe that was something that came out of their university professional development program. And then I also watched Automaton, which is just this 4-minute experimental short almost. It's about rain and fire and the elements, and it's just a visual explosion that takes me back to many of those early 1920 1930 shorts. So wow, that was really interesting. So those are the only two I saw. I know Adam has seen a lot. I'm not sure if Brett saw any of these. It came out of left field, so I'm going to go source out the Dam Keeper after this episode because Adam was praising it so much. But yeah, it seems like there is still some genuinely incredible stuff coming out of Pixar from a direction I had never thought it would be coming from.
So for me, I actually had only heard about the co-op program in preparation for this episode, but I'd seen the first 3 shorts 5 or 6 years ago. The Dam Keeper, Borrowed Time, and Weekends. And I'm pretty sure they all came on my radar because they were all nominated for Oscars for the Best Animated Short. And I had no idea about any Pixar connection to them at the time. Borrowed Time was my least favorite, actually, of them. Dam Keeper was a little bit simplistic, but it was still fun. And I liked Weekends more. And that was definitely more maybe adult or teen heavy material, dealing with child of divorced parents and having to go different places on weekends. And then I saw Pete earlier this year. I've been interested in that one for a while, and that's my favorite of the co-op program ones for sure. And it's based on a true story, which is really sweet. And at the end of the film, the actual Pete, I think they either show a picture of Pete or they say something, I can't remember. But I quite liked it. And then I did seek out Automaton this week. It's an experimental short, pretty animation, but doesn't really do much for me. And I haven't been able to see the most recent one, Starling, that just came out last year. But just based on the poster and premise alone, I'm really interested to see it, and I'm looking forward to being able to catch up on it. I like these in the sense that they stand on their own. They barely even have the Pixar label on them. So I think they'll get the benefit of Pixar distribution. I saw the Automaton on the Pixar official YouTube channel, which is how I was able to locate it. But I don't feel like they came with the baggage of being a Pixar film. And even if people will find out of it because of Pixar, they're able to appreciate them on their own merits. And I highly recommend you seek them out. And I mean, we just found this because of the Wikipedia article that says some of their co-op work includes. Maybe there are even others we're not even aware of that will be just as amazing. So I'm looking forward to learning more about this co-op program and seeing more output from it in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was Wikipedia. I managed to find this information as well because I was searching for Pixar co-op, and it just got me to various random pages with no information. So it's just so strange because, yeah, sure, Automaton, that's not for everyone, but Borrowed Time, that's such a well-made film, and the Dam Keeper was nominated for Best Short Film. Borrowed Time was nominated for Best Short Film. Weekends as well. I mean, that's wow. So this really is despite coming out of this university, these are really carrying on the mantle of the success, at least, of the early Pixar shorts. I didn't know. I had no idea, and I hadn't heard of the co-op program before this either. So it just took me by complete surprise.
Yeah, so over the past week, I've been watching absolutely tons of shorts, 80 plus Pixar shorts, including amazing ones and really weak ones. And I can't remember if it was Brett, but someone had mentioned the co-op shorts on our chat. And they're kind of, they're on Wikipedia, they're kind of at the bottom of it. And I just assumed these aren't going to be worth watching. So I put them to the bottom of my watch list. But then, this morning I had a little bit of time left to watch some more shorts, and I still had a few left. There was another Cars series, and there was an Up series, which I didn't really fancy. And I was like, I'm just going to give I think I read about the co-op shorts, and I was like, I noticed that they've been nominated for Oscars and stuff, and I was like, wow, they must have actually, got a lot of attention. I just kind of assumed they were like totally unknown. And yeah, I've got to be honest. I mean, I was completely blown away by them. If I was to make a top 10 of all Pixar shorts, I would probably have at least four of the shorts from the co-op series in my top 10. I mean, a lot of them are so different, especially the early ones. I think are so different from the Pixar shorts in general. They just didn't feel like Pixar at all to me. And they were exploring darker ideas. The animation was different and really interesting. And yeah, straight away with the Dam Keeper, after a couple of minutes, I was like, this is great. And it was at the point where like I barely even finished watching one of them, and I was messaging Chris being like, you have to watch these because, not just for the podcast, but because they're actually like, the quality of them. And I thought the quality of them was amazing. And they were just so far removed from most of the Pixar shorts, which are generally well made, generally entertaining, but these shorts felt like they were generally trying to do something very different. And some of them are some of my favorite short films I'd actually watch them again because I just thought they were really doing something different in animation and in storytelling. And yeah, I thought they were excellent. I mean, the Automaton one I liked, but I'd need to rewatch it. It didn't work quite as well for me in the sense that I respected them doing something different, and I thought it was really interesting. But I think the other ones were really good. I mean, it's quite interesting as well that the last one, which just came out, Starling, which is 2023, to me, that the Starling one, the last one, felt very different. So the first, I would kind of say Borrowed Time, the Dam Keeper, Borrowed Time, Weekends, Automaton, they feel very different from Pixar. And then Pete is a little bit more, I think Pete's really interesting because they're exploring kind of like gender identity. It feels a little bit a little bit closer to Pixar in terms of the topic since the 2010s. But it still did something really interesting. And then the last one, Starling, maybe felt a little bit more like a Pixar film. It was a little bit different from the first co-op shorts. But that one really resonated with me. It's only on for a few minutes. I don't really want to spoil it, but it's basically about a couple who have lost their daughter, like a really young daughter, and they're about to celebrate her birthday. And then it's about them kind of making a wish as they're at the cake, and then the star kind of comes down from the sky, and it's the daughter, and it's got a kind of really magical kind of ending. And that one really resonated for me because my mum lost my brother, like, who was only 1 year old, and like I think. Yeah, I don't know how it will translate for Chris or someone because I think it's different from the first co-op shorts. But for me, it was really magical, and that one alongside. I mean, I'd have the Dam Keeper, Starling, Borrowed Time, Weekends in my top six. I'd probably have all four of them. That's how much I loved them.
Damn, Adam, that's that's really high praise.
I was burnt out from all the Pixar shorts, and I was kind of getting sick of it. And then I really loved them. But yeah, and Starling, I don't know if it's as much from an artistic point of view, but the story like resonated with me. And then the Dam Keeper, Borrowed Time and Weekends, I just thought were really excellent as well. And yeah, I liked them that much that I'd have those four right at the top of my list. Because I feel like Pixar shorts, as much as I really like some of them, generally they're not quite what I'm looking for from a short film. Whereas the co-op series was really kind of hitting it, something that I like about shorts. It's hard to articulate it, but I knew like minutes into the first one, I was like, okay, this is really what I want to see. Whereas the Pixar ones are well made. I like a lot of them, but I've never really absolutely loved the Pixar shorts. Whereas the co-op ones, I was like, yeah, this is amazing. This is like completely different. And I thought they were absolutely brilliant. I was like blown away, to be honest.
I mean, just from Borrowed Time, I mean, that's one I would probably put in my top 5 Pixar shorts as well. So yeah, maybe these co-op films, they just come in there and they replace all the Pixar ones.
Well, I think Brett maybe touched on it, but or someone did, but I feel like maybe because they're not quite so tied to Pixar. I think I read that the people who make them are like animators or they have other roles on the Pixar feature films, but are not sort of the prominent directors. I feel like maybe there's a bit more freedom for those directors because there's less of a tie to Pixar. It felt very much like they weren't for most of the shorts. I didn't feel like they were following the Pixar formula or the SparkShorts formula. They were kind of doing their own thing. It just felt a lot more independent, and I think maybe that's tied to like the people being a little bit less known and it not being quite so prominent as Pixar. Like if you go on IMDb, Pixar's not even listed, on the main page.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So I think that might be why. And I think that might be why I liked them even more, because they were much more different. Whereas Pixar is really great at lots of shorts, but very rarely would I watch a Pixar short and say I love them. Whereas I often really like them, think they're very good, think they're very well made. But I think it might be tied to like the freedom to kind of do something different and giving the opportunity to people who are not like Toy Story directors and that kind of thing. So a different kind of audience, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, I could have done a podcast about them because I was like so happy when I watched them. And yeah, Chris, you need to watch them even if we've done this episode.
No, I will.
One thing to note is we're just working off that list we found on Wikipedia that only has those 6 co-op films. So if any of our listeners are aware of other co-op films, please do let us know because we'd love to explore them more.
Yeah, absolutely. Please, please, please do, because like just from the little I've seen, like this is something else entirely. And for a time, absolutely fantastic. Whew. And it's time then for us to gank the episode back on a more negative track, possibly, because we were talking about how the feature-related content was a big downer, but our very last official section of this episode is talking about those feature-related ones that aren't just feature-related shorts, but are essentially shows on their own or short film collections, etc., that are specifically just spun off the films. Like, there's some really interesting stuff here. Like, you have 2 25-minute Toy Story shorts that took years to develop. Like, they feel like episodes from a Toy Story show, essentially. Like, a proper big one. Then you have, like, just, like, random stuff like Forky Asks a Question. You have Dog Days, which is the one that Adam didn't watch this morning, but I did. You have the Toy Story Tunes. And then just an endless barrage of Cars-related short film collections like Mother's Tall Tales, Tales from Radiator Springs, and I'm sure there's something. Oh yes, Cars on the Road. A lot of car stuff. I think I said I skipped pretty much all of this. I think Adam even did too, so I'm not sure how much we'll talk about the Cars mania, but let's see. So let's start with the negativity first, just to try to end the episode on as positive note as humanly possible. What were the low points of these feature film related tie-ins, if you will?
Right, so after I've spoken so positively about the co-op one, I don't really want to be that negative. I wish we'd ended on co-op. I guess, like, I'm not going to go into too much criticism because kind of what we said about the feature-related shorts is just that, for me, like, I've only seen the first Cars. I've seen every Pixar film apart from Cars 2 and 3. I haven't seen Inside Out 2, actually, as well. But I like Inside Out a lot. So anyway, like, Cars was, like, one of the weakest films for me, apart from The Good Dinosaur, actually, sorry. Let me start again. So Cars is one of the worst films for me, but there is there is 1 or 2 Cars shorts that were like released on the DVDs, like Mater and the Ghost Light, which was all right. It wasn't anything great, but it wasn't awful. And then the Tall Tales one, though, yeah, that really felt like it was made for kids rather than adults. I mean, it's about 11 shorts, and they're all about him kind of telling a lie about how he was he was a monster truck guy. He was a heavy metal person. It's kind of just the same short 11 times with like a slightly different lie. And there's one, like the Private Eye one is a little bit different. It feels a little bit better because it's got a different tone. But yeah, it's kind of like once you've seen a couple of them, you've seen them all. But I feel like that was very much aimed at kids. I also watched Tales from Radiator Springs, which was also Cars related. I preferred it to the Tall Tales, maybe because there's only 4 of them and they cover a different thing each time. But again, I would say those 2 sets are very much aimed at kids. And maybe I guess Cars is in general. So I didn't like Cars. If you don't like Cars as a feature film, probably wasting your time watching them. I didn't have time to watch Cars on the Road. I mean, what's clear, obviously, apart from Toy Story, there's no other film with as many sequels as Cars. And, I don't think it's a coincidence that when you look at the different series of shorts, and you look at like all the different ones they've done, Cars and Toy Story are by far the most, have the most content. And I think that's probably a kind of money thing. They're probably the most lucrative. And yeah, Cars just doesn't work for me as a film, and the short series certainly don't work either. I watched 1 episode of Forky Asks a Question just because I didn't have time to watch more. And To be honest, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, but I didn't like it. I mean, I didn't like Forky at all, and I didn't like Toy Story 4 I loved the first three. I didn't really like Toy Story 4 as much. Yeah, that's another kids one. It's like, what is love? What is time? It's kind of like educational. And then I watched one episode of Dog Days, which was better than I expected, but you know, I didn't watch enough of it. I think you see the ones that are weaker very much feel kid related and feel like they've got a very different target audience. So it's difficult for me to really go into deep criticism of a series called Forky Asks a Question, because it's clearly not, you know, I'm not going to write a review on what is love, but in the Forky Asks a Question series about a fork talking to a couple of dinosaurs, a dinosaur who's fallen in love with a chair. Like it's all educational and childlike. They churn out a lot of this stuff because Toy Story and Cars feel like they've just got a lot of mileage and people will keep watching and kids will keep watching. And if you don't like Cars and you're not a kid, you're probably not going to love the shorts.
Okay, so I've barely seen any of the ones. I've seen all four of the Toy Story ones, but only three of the various Cars related ones, and I just kind of watched them by accident. And there's definitely a clear separation in not necessarily quality, but enjoyment. I didn't really care for the Cars related ones, and they're probably amongst my worst rated shorts. But I really enjoyed all four of the Toy Story ones, and I think that might be because they are over, I think they're at least 15 minutes each, if not more. Like they feel substantial, almost like featurettes. And so they give time for the story to develop. And again, we're revisiting characters we've already seen peripherally in the main films. So it's nice to give a little bit of extra time to some of those minor characters that maybe we enjoyed them as a sidekick. We want to give them a little of their own fun times. So I really enjoy them, but the Cars not so much. And I don't really have any interest in seeking out the remaining Cars series. I might check out one or two of the Up related ones with Dog Days, but definitely not on my priority list.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, this is with Adam. I mean, the Car series, besides the Good Dinosaur, are the worst Pixar films. I mean, I still enjoy them, but they are more geared for kids as opposed to the other films, which feel like they're for everyone. And because of that, I'm never really drawn to the Cars one. Like the Cars shorts, I saw some of the weaker ones as well, so I just wasn't drawn to them. But I will say that the feature-related tie-ins here that are essentially shows or standalone spin-offs, etc., they were honestly overall better than the feature-related like DVD shorts for the most part. Like Dog Days, which is it's essentially a series. Each episode is about 7 to 10 minutes long. I think there's 5 episodes in total of the original series at least. It's cute. It's fun. It's very well animated. Like you have the two main characters of Carl and Doug, and it's just some fun mayhem. It feels a bit slight, but like if you love the characters, like you might think it's great. I mean, it has an 8.0 rating on IMDb, so I had to see it. I wasn't blown away, but then what worked the best for me with Up was Carl and the child dynamic, and it wasn't really the dogs, like I mentioned earlier, though Doug is the best of the dogs. But no, it's very enjoyable, just not fully for me. But the Toy Story tunes, they were actually really good. I mean, I would actually say like Hawaiian Vacation and Partysaurus Rex, both of them are around 7 minutes long. Borderline great, to be honest. They're just really, really fun to watch. Small Fry felt a bit lighter, but they all just have that quality of Toy Story, and I think Toy Story, like Toy Story trilogy, is fantastic, the great trilogy of Pixar, and the characters are great. So even like something like Toy Story 4, I really like. I'm gonna watch Toy Story 5, of course. Like I think they've really nailed the dynamics, and then it's just the plots and the like what's happening there that might be a little bit lackluster, but just seeing these, like Hawaiian Vacation is about the Barbie and Ken doll, like trying to get a date and all of the toys helping them out. Partysaurus Rex is about Rex entering the bathroom and being played with along with all of the bathroom toys and just not wanting to get out of his shell and going all crazy. And it's just a lot of fun. And then you have those two Toy Story shorts that feel like mini features. Toy Story of Horror and Toy Story That Time Forgot. Both of them well over 20 minutes. The Toy Story That Time Forgot was developed over 3 years. I mean, they're huge productions. They might have been able to be expanded to features. Like these are like shorts that you can actually dive into, similar that you would to some of the movies. Like they're a bit slimmer on plot. I would say that the Toy Story of Horror really good. That was heading towards great for me. Like the first 5-10 minutes of that, it's doing something different. You have all of the great characters, good setup. You're joking around with horror tropes, really fun. And then it kind of became a riff on Toy Story 2, which made that stand out a bit less for me. But no, that was just a really good short. And same with Toy Story That Time Forgot. You have a new plot line. The toys are on a play date after Christmas, and they encounter toys that's never been played with before. It's similar theme to what happened with Buzz Lightyear, essentially, but on a much bigger scale. And again, just very well done. You have the character dynamics, new characters that are memorable. It doesn't hit quite as hard as the other Toy Stories, but it's along the quality line of, say, Toy Story 4. So those are really damn good. And if you love Toy Story, just make sure to check those out. I really feel like the Toy Story shorts in general throughout all of this have just been very, very strong compared to the other feature-related works in general. So I definitely recommend those.
Yeah, so I deliberately didn't talk about Toy Story on the first sort of section of this question because I wanted to end more positively, but I agree with everything that's been said. For me, the Toy Story shorts, the Terror one, Toy Story That Time Forgot, and the Toy Story Toons, I think they're all very, very strong. And I think they're, for the most part, they're strong. They're stronger than the vast, vast majority of the feature-related shorts. I'd have them up there with the original theatrical shorts in terms of quality. It's really great seeing Toy Story of Terror and Toy Story That Time Forgot because they are like sort of TV episodes, like was said previously, but like high quality ones. And I think what helps Toy Story is, the Toy Story trilogy was absolutely excellent. They have a really wide range of characters and you kind of like all the characters, and these shorts explore a little bit more. And even though Toy Story 4 I'm not a big fan of, partly because I just loved the ending of Toy Story 3, it's still a good film. I'm a big fan of all of those Toy Story shorts. I think they've done a brilliant job with them. And yeah, they feel different to most of the feature-related shorts. They just feel above most of them. And maybe that's just because of the strength of the trilogy. I don't know. But yeah, I couldn't say a word against any of them. I think they're all really enjoyable and really good quality.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be repeating myself, but yes, I completely agree. And I think you're right there. Like, this is the strength of the original trilogy, more specifically, just the strength of the premise, the strength of the characters, the dynamics between the characters. It's just so much fun. Like, you have, like, tried and tested character dynamics that bounce off each other, and just the idea of being able to use different toys for different purposes. Like, you can so easily encounter toys you haven't encountered before and create stories for them. Like the combat Carl, for instance, memorable character, the Raptor character, specifically the main one from the Toy Story That Time Forgot. You have standout characters from these shorts as well. It's such a great premise. I think the main issue with Toy Story is that they wrapped it up with a perfect ending with Toy Story 3. I mean, they could have done a Toy Story every year. Like, they could have continued in the 90s. As long as they spent a little bit more time developing the story, like, there's just an endless amount of possibilities with Toy Story just because the character dynamics are so great. It's just a shame that they kind of wrapped it up in a perfect way and then they kind of like have to hook it back up. And the fact that, they probably had to hook it back up again because they got moved to Bonnie, and Bonnie really shines in these films. Like, I think she's a great replacement of Andy as the human. But now, obviously, like, this is over a decade ago, so she'll be a teenager adult now as well. So now they kind of, like, have to do Toy Story 3 again, I guess. So, like, this is the problem for Toy Story, just of how they have to keep going to humans and keep having to change and evolve unless they go back in time. But no, yeah, the expanded Toy Story universe is very, very strong. So if anyone listening to this who loves Toy Story but haven't seen the extended universe, like, just be sure to seek them out. It will be interesting to see what Pixar does in the future. I mean, SparkShorts is clearly going to continue. So is the co-op program. Like, what are you guys' hopes for the core program, which we now suddenly love and has changed our view on recent Pixar, essentially, SparkShorts and Pixar shorts in general? Like, what do you expect from them in the future?
I mean, as the saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I think Pixar, when it comes to shorts, they're doing great. I personally would love to see more original shorts, but it feels like they've transitioned from releasing original shorts theatrically into the SparkShorts program, because the timing is almost exact. Like, where is it? The last original short was Bow, I believe, and that was released in 2018. And then the first SparkShorts came out in 2019. So it feels like they just have transitioned to there. But I want to see more original stories, in whatever form. I would love to see more of what they've got with the co-op program. I'm not against having more feature-related shorts because they can be fun. And if I like the feature film enough, and I'm fully expecting that we will get a Inside Out 2 related short eventually, given the popularity of that franchise. I know they've got a really big production house, and I'm happy to see that they're not just focusing on the most well-known properties, but they are willing to take a risk and branch out into these unknown directors, unknown animators, unconventional storytelling, or maybe not unconventional, but maybe underrepresented storytelling. And I'm excited to see what they've got in store for the next decade or so.
I think I largely agree with Brett. My main priority is more original shorts, be that SparkShorts co-op. I think it's really important that they bring out more of them. I'm also not at all against the feature-related shorts. Whilst they're not as good generally, it's nice to get extras. It's nice that Inside Out 2 comes out and then you hopefully get like a little short with that. I think they've got a really good formula. I think it's interesting to see what will happen because, with SparkShorts, you had tons of shorts from 2019 to 2021, and then there's only been one short since then. So I'm not sure what the plan is. They went from producing absolutely tons to just one in the last 3 years. So I'm assuming they're going to keep producing them. I don't know if it'll be how regular it will be. And then the co-op program's a bit more regular as well. You've only got 6 shorts from 2014 to now. So I really, really hope the co-op program continues. I hope we get as many original shorts as we can. And I hope there's enough time kind of given to the directors, animators, that we can get as high a quality as possible. And I'm sure we'll also get more like Toy Story shorts. Yeah, I think it's kind of continue what they're doing, but I'm going to pay close attention to what they do next now that I've kind of caught up with everything. And the co-op program gives me a lot of hope that they're going to bring out different types of shorts. And then the SparkShorts one gives you hope because they're exploring different sort of identity kind of themes. And I think there's an interesting direction in the next sort of few years that Pixar could take with interesting concepts and lesser known directors. I think it could go down a good path in the next few years as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with pretty much everything you guys are saying. The only thing is that when Brett said if they broke, don't fix it. I do think that there's been, like the fact that the SparkShorts only get 6 months, I think that's an issue. So I hope that they change their mind a little bit on that and that they give these films a little bit more of production. I think that right now they're potentially only being produced for Disney Plus with a couple of exceptions. I hope that, they take some bigger investments there as well too, because they released some of these films along with their features, like you mentioned, like they released Burrow with Soul, they released Kitbull with Turning Red. So hopefully, they know in advance which one are going to go out, and they put a little bit of extra effort in those, and we get some more traditional Pixar shorts that can really, really stand out in animation and in storytelling, etc. Let's hope that happens. But I didn't know about SparkShorts before we started planning for this episode. So I'm really happy to be introduced to that, even though I think the quality is a bit lower than the ones that they took more time with. And I'm so happy that I was introduced to the co-op program. So I will I follow that Wikipedia article occasionally to see what new co-op shorts are coming out. That's clearly where the gold mine seems to be. I will make absolute sure that after this episode, I'll seek out all of the other co-op shorts that I can find. Because I have a feeling I'll agree with that. Like I said, Burrow Time is already in my top 5 Pixar shorts, if it's even counted as a proper Pixar short. So these are the ones I just have to seek out. And beyond that, I hope that they start doing a little bit more of what they did in the past, where they elevate the best directors from their shorts to working as directors running projects on feature level as well. Because, for instance, Domi, she did X and Bow, then she did Turning Red, which is one of the better ones from the last few years. I hope that some told from the core program. Like I hope that the directors of Borrowed Time, for instance, Andrew Coates and Lou Hamu Lunch. Hopefully, if those people get more famous, I'll learn how to pronounce the last one's name. I hope that those kinds of directors get even more opportunities to expand as well. Because if you can deliver something that great in a short running time, you can do it in a long running time as well. So those are my hopes for the future. Please comment on icmforum.com and tell us about your hopes for Pixar's short future and what you feel or how you feel about their shorts in general, from the theatrical shorts to the feature tie-ins to SparkShorts and indeed the Quo program. Like, did you know about the Quo program before this episode? Because again, we really didn't. I mean, I didn't even have a clue about SparkShorts, embarrassingly. So, what was your awareness of Pixar's recent short film adventures, and what do you think about them? Come to icmforum.com and let us know. And with that, thank you so much for listening, and join us again soon. You have been listening to Talking Images, the official podcast of icmforum.com.